Hey everybody, Who's Your Jedi here with another review for you. This time I'm talking episode 8 of season 2 of Riverdale, House of the Devil. And I'd say this was a solid episode, but maybe not the best one this season so far. So let's just kind of get right into it. Let's take some of the smaller stuff first. So Cheryl is continuing to try and Mac on Josie discreetly. I mean, this episode, she basically is like, yeah, here, let me give you a massage. And you can see that Josie is more than a little creeped out by this. Um, and then this kind of provides another opportunity for Svensson to sort of pop up where Josie is, which I do find kind of interesting. Well, excuse me, I'm still getting over a cold and haven't quite vanquished the coughing up snot phase of it all. Now, Svensson turning out to be the kid who, with the whole House of the Devil, Riverdale Reaper thing. Okay, well, I knew that kind of character was going to pop up on the show at some point. Um, once they explained what the deal with that house was. And, big surprise, it turned out to be the one that Betty went to. Um, but I thought they were going to go somewhere really cliche with like having that kid grow up to be the Reaper. But here, that doesn't really seem like it's the case. I mean, Archie looks into Svensson's eyes, and it's not the same guy. And I'm glad that they kind of went with that. You take what I was expecting to happen, and then you use that against me to do something completely different. I love it when stories can do that. It shows creativity and originality and an awareness of writing that I think is very, very critical for good storytelling. Let's see. So let's talk about what's going on with Archie and Veronica this episode. Of course, the big situation there is Archie tells Veronica that he loves her, and Veronica just isn't able to really reciprocate that. And to his credit, Archie is extremely understanding about this. He's like, look, you're not required to tell me that you love me back. And he's very understanding that, this is kind of an awkward thing to throw out there. I mean, yeah, he and Veronica have been partying between the sheets pretty hardy lately, but nonetheless, they've still only been together really for a few months. So laying something like that on someone, yeah, that's a pretty big thing. And I think the real payoff of all of this is that situation where at the end, where Veronica realizes that she's never heard her mother say that she loved her father, and probably vice versa. I think she even said, like, you guys never, and then she sort of trails off, realizing she has never once in her whole life heard her parents tell each other that they love the other. And this is actually kind of fitting with what I've been saying, that Hiram in a lot of ways seems to treat his wife sometimes like an employee. You do what I say. You take orders from me. Don't try and defy me, which is basically about as opposite as from a proper husband-wife relationship as you can get. Ugh, damn colds. And just the Veronica's freaking out when she sort of realizes this is that another illusion, another thing that she's built her world around is turned out to be an illusion. So it's no wonder that she doesn't really want to jump into saying something like that with Archie. She might genuinely not feel for him as strongly as he does for her. And you have to wonder if Veronica isn't saying to herself, well, if until this moment I had always just sort of taken it for granted that my parents loved each other, then what does it say about how I understand love? What does it say about what I believe love to be is? Oh, and speaking of which, let me backtrack for a minute. There was something else I wanted to say about Cheryl. And like last season, we saw that after Archie helped save her life, that Cheryl was very, very drawn to him. And now here Josie helps Cheryl after Nick St. Clair tried to rape her. So you kind of have to think this is, Cheryl is desperately looking for someone who can really sort of be there for her, who can sort of be the person that looks after her and, can protect her from all the darkness of the world, which is kind of a funny thing because, Cheryl is nobody to mess with. She's a pretty formidable person on her own. But we saw from her relationship with her brother that, having this idealized person in her life who is her closest connection to anyone, that seems to be how she's built a lot of who she is in the world around her. Jason's gone, he can't come back. She thought maybe it seemed like Archie could be that person, but she squicked him out pretty quick. And now, it looks like she thinks that Josie might be that person. And again, this episode shows she's heading kind of a like squicking direction. So, you have to feel a little bit bad for Cheryl that she is this emotionally messed up that she's doing these sort of things. But in all fairness, Cheryl is falling into a classic trap that pretty much I think everyone falls into at some point in their life, and that some people spend their whole lives in. They spend their whole lives in this trap. And this is the trap of thinking that someone else can make you happy. Now, what I mean by this is think about for a moment where happiness comes from. Happiness isn't something that comes in a box. It isn't something you can buy at a store. And forgive me, I've been thinking about How the Grinch Stole Christmas a lot today, so for various reasons. So some of these that is rubbing off on me. Happiness comes from within. People sort of say, and it's very cliche, that you have to love yourself before you can love anyone else. Well, again, happiness is something that comes from within. And while having other people in your life can enrich you and make your life happier, it is ultimately something that comes from within yourself. And if you depend on other people as your source of happiness, you are constantly going to be disappointed because other people are flawed people. They will never 100% of the time be able to live up to your needs and expectations. And it's honestly, frankly, unfair to put your personal happiness as another person's responsibility. It's your life. So make it a good one, if I can steal a line from Back to the Future. And Cheryl is making that classic mistake. Before everything went to hell, Jason was the source of her happiness. And now look at where we are now. Anyway, I am kind of curious as to see whether or not the people that killed the Riverdale Reaper will have any deeper repercussions. But again, these would have to be some pretty old guys because, Svensson was a kid when this all happened. So, we don't know. I can't really think of any really elderly people that we've seen on the show outside of maybe Mr. Weatherby. But that seems like that he participated in a vigilante murder back in like the 60s or whatever. That seems pretty unlikely. So the whole situation with Jughead and Betty and FP. Well, one thing I did like is that Betty, this episode, was really upfront with her mom about, her plans and all of that. And it was even kind of fun to like have her kind of basically win that argument and point out like, hey mom, before you complain about me dating a serpent, remember you were one. And it was fun to see Alice sort of slip back into her old ways and walk into the bar and the bartender still remembers her drink all of these years. That was really cool. Sort of just shows you that don't underestimate Alice. She knows a thing or two about the rough and tumble side of life. The less said about the whole snake dance thing, that was just embarrassing. I don't want to talk about that. That was ridiculous. I mean, never mind that sleazy bar or biker bar or not. A minor doing this, yeah, that's no. Well, the thing I really liked best this episode was where Jughead stands up to Penny Peabody and basically says, like, yeah, you've got is a grainy surveillance footage. You want to try and mess with me using that, go right ahead, which is basically kind of one thing I pointed out last week. Now after that, Penny basically says, like, okay, well, I can probably get your dad thrown back in jail in no time. Well, okay, now there it's I was a little surprised at how flippant Jughead was about that situation because as a guy who's on parole, yeah, if FP slips up even in a small way, he could easily land himself back in jail. And Penny, I don't think would have any trouble making arrangements so that something like that would come to Sheriff Keller's attention. And then Penny seems to try and imply that she would go after Betty if Jughead still wasn't willing to play ball. Again, this does not seem like a very smart move on Penny's part, because one, Betty is the daughter of a former member of the Southside Serpents, and her parents are both big shots at the local newspaper. They run the town newspaper. Anything happens to Betty, oh man, are they just going to go absolutely nuts? And we've seen that Betty's parents are, again, not people that you should take lightly. I mean, her dad broke into the sheriff's house and stole a bunch of evidence last season. So if anything were to happen to Betty, then yeah, never non-stop media firestorm. And oh yeah, well, what's going to happen? Well, Jughead is immediately going to go to Sheriff Keller and tell them what happened. And there's no way that Alice is not going to get wind of this. So if Penny tries to do anything to Betty in any way, shape, or form, it's going to blow up in her face. Never mind the fact that Jughead might just flip the heck out and show up at Penny's house with a gun. I mean, if Archie can end up with a gun on this episode, I certainly wouldn't put it past Jughead if somebody seriously hurt his girlfriend. Oh man, sometimes I just love how dark this show is. It's fantastic. Oh god. So yeah, Penny not making the smartest of plays here. And just this episode where Jughead stands up to Tallboy, I really think that Tallboy is in Penny's pocket. I mean, I really do. I don't normally do theory crafting stuff, but I just gotta point that out here. I mean, so much of his actions just makes sense if he's working for Penny. Now, of course, this whole thing at the bar is the climax of it all. And I do like how FP points out that, according to the rules of his parole, he should totally not be hanging out with known criminals and former criminal associates, which basically are going to describe pretty much everybody in that bar who's not somebody from Riverdale High or Betty's mom. So yeah, legally, FP should not be there. And I can't believe Jughead was actually like, yeah, let's do this. Let's do this thing that's totally a violation of your parole. And then, of course, this all blows up in Jughead's face, where FP reclaims his role as a serpent and basically says, hey, I'm doing this to sort of take away your debt with Penny. You screwed this up, but, this is my responsibility now. Okay, I don't get this whole thing with, like, you did the one thing I told you not to do. Okay, I don't remember FP ever saying, do not ask Penny Peabody for help. I remember him freaking out when Jughead said, I asked Penny Peabody for help and now I owe her a favor. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. At what point did he ever say to her, don't do a favor for Penny Peabody? And I don't really remember him saying, don't try and repay Penny Peabody if that favor you owe her. I just remember him basically saying, please tell me you paid her. So, yeah, okay, maybe I'm forgetting something from a previous episode, but this seems weird. So you have to wonder, well, okay, was him reclaiming leadership at the Serpents his idea? Or was this some sort of a deal that he struck with Penny Peabody? I don't know, we'll find out soon. But yeah, Jughead is not in a good place knowing that he effed up and now his dad's chance to go straight is gone. And the way things are, it's pretty much only a matter of time before Sheriff Keller shows back up once again with those handcuffs to take his dad away, probably for good. So yeah, it's no wonder that Jughead is emotionally not in a good place. And why he really makes it clear to Betty, it's like, you need to stay the hell away from this stuff. I kind of have to say I'm a little bit with Jughead on this one because Betty's idea of I should at least become an associate of the serpents so that I can stay close to Jughead. This is really not a smart idea because not as we've seen, the serpents are not necessarily all on Jughead's side, as evidenced by Tallboy. And you have to figure there's probably others. Never mind the fact that it looks like the serpents were very close to striking some sort of long-term relationship with the ghoulies. I mean, no, Jughead is way better off, or somebody he cares about is off on the sidelines. But again, Betty is thinking emotionally and not logically, which is perfectly understandable. And then, of course, we all end up with kind of back where we started in episode 1 with this sort of funny tension between Archie and Betty and the possibility that something might happen there. Interesting stuff. Anyway, guys, that's all I had to say for this time around. As always, please comment, rate, subscribe, and of course you can follow me on Twitter at Hoosier Jedi, and please also join me on Tumblr at Jedi Reviewer. Till next time, take care and have a good one.